First off, the release date. Gold Road is now available for PC and Mac and will be coming to Xbox and PlayStation on June 18th. As with all chapters, there will be a new zone and story. Those that played The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion will recognize the region, the Westweald, and the story will focus on a previously unknown Daedric prince named Athalia. The new zone will have all the typical features you'd expect from a chapter, such as delves, public dungeons, and world events. Then there's also a new 12-person trial called Lucent Citadel. Definitely feels like they wanted to shake things up with this one, and without spoilers, I'll just say that the last boss is quite a different encounter from what you'd normally expect from a trial. We also have a really big new feature coming to the game called Scribing. Essentially, we are getting 11 new skills that we can customize in a ton of different ways to make them fit into our builds, but I'll cover Scribing in a lot more detail later in this video, showing you how to unlock everything, and I'll also go over some of my favorite scribed skill combinations. Thank you, Bethesda, for sponsoring this video. I have a link for purchasing Gold Road down below. Another cool new feature coming is skill styling. This lets you take pre-existing skills and modify their appearance. There are 22 skill styles that you can earn by doing scribing quests, completing dailies, and many other ways. All 22 of these are earnable in-game. On top of that, there will be a new Tales of Tribute deck, new homes and furnishings, and lots of new collectibles, including a new skin that you can earn by doing all of the main story quests in the game. TNLine has a video out going over the details of that. Definitely check it out. I'll have it linked down below. We also have some new item sets coming, 10 5-piece sets and 3 mythics. I did a video already covering these a little bit more in depth, so make sure to check that out if you want to dig in more, but for this video, I'll just go ahead and point out a few of my favorites. First, we have Highland Sentinel. This is a crafted set. While in combat, each second you stand still grants you a stack of Sentinel's Eye, increasing your crit chance by 357 per stack, stacking up to 10 times. Each second you move, half of your stacks of Sentinel's Eye are removed. So this one is just over 16% crit chance from that 5-piece bonus when you're at the full 10 stacks. Just a really strong bonus if you are in an encounter that allows you to stay put. Even if you do have to move just a little bit here and there and you only drop your stacks occasionally, it will still be near the top performing DPS sets. Very situational with this one, but also very strong when it can be used. Then we have Threads of War, also a crafted set. Your light and fully charged heavy attacks gain 100% status effect chance. I really like this set a lot. Light and heavy attacks normally cannot trigger status effects, so this set essentially just changes that to a guaranteed proc each time. Status effects can do really good damage. I especially see this one being nice with an ice staff for wardens who deal that increased chilled damage. It does lose a bit of value if you front bar it only compared to some other proc sets, but for an easy to get craftable option, this is going to do really good damage. Another one I really like is the heavy set from the new trial, Lucent Echoes. While you have more than 50% health, the critical damage and critical healing of any group members not wearing Lucent Echoes increases by 11%. While you have 50% or less health, reduce your damage taken from monsters by 20%. Really awesome set here, not only for increasing your group's damage and healing, but also reducing your damage taken as a tank wearing it if you get low on health. I see this one becoming a staple for many teams. Then finally, we have the light DPS set from the new trial, Mora Scribe's Thesis. Increase your crit chance by 128 for every major buff you have active on you. Increase your crit damage done by 1% for every minor buff you have active on you. Really strong bonuses here, up to 7% crit chance and 12% crit damage. A straight upgrade over something like Order's Wrath, as long as you have enough buffs going here, which shouldn't be too tough to come by. It's slightly lower overall than Sul'Xan's Torment, but that set is a bit more situational since you need the steady flow of enemies dying to keep the bonus up there, so I think it's pretty well balanced that it's not quite as strong as Sul'Xan. Alright, let's move on to the combat balance changes. Pretty light here compared to most major updates, but definitely some stuff here that is important to know. There will be a slight cost increase to Cephaliarch's Flail for the Arcanist. I couldn't really tell much difference when I was running the new trial on the PTS. For Necromancers, their tethers are both being buffed, the damage tether by 33% and the healing tether by about 14%. Definitely a nice bump up for Necro DPS. For Nightblades, their Dark Shade now deals AoE damage with every hit instead of a mix of single target and AoE. This won't make a huge difference, but will result in a tad bit more AoE in the Nightblades kit and a very small DPS loss for single target damage due to this no longer scaling with deadly aim. For Sorcerer, just a small change to the heal on Blood Magic. This will now heal you when you activate an ability in that skill line rather than when you hit an enemy with an ability in that line. For Templars, Blazing Spear now has a 4-second Immobilize attached to it. They said this was done to give Templar tanks an Immobilize tool. For Wardens, their Betty Netch now has a 5% damage increase attached to it. The way that it works is that every 5 seconds it will try and remove a negative effect, and if there isn't one, it gives you a 5% damage buff instead. Really nice change here overall. This skill's good for sustain, it lasts a long time, it gives you major buffs, and now it's a nice DPS skill to run as well with that 5% damage done. For the Mage's Guild, the Everlasting Magic passive changed to extend abilities by 2 seconds rather than 20%. This won't have a big impact as they did adjust equilibrium to account for that, and the Meteor Ultimate will have the same number of ticks as before. Entropy and Scalding Rune will each lose 1 tick of damage, but overall it's really not going to make that big of a difference. Werewolves got some really nice changes. Their light and heavy attacks will deal bleed damage rather than physical, and also they'll have a chance to apply the hemorrhaging status effect, unlike the normal 0% chance that regular light and heavy attacks have. Ferocious Roar will now apply a new debuff called Terrified to enemies. I'll go over what that does in just a second. The Deafening Roar morph will grant major protection for slotting rather than major prophecy and savagery, and it'll cause your heavy attacks to taunt enemies for 15 seconds. So just a more clear split between having a damage and a tanking morph here. Piercing Howl will now deal 10% bonus damage to enemies that are terrified, so this now pairs with that Ferocious Roar morph to maximize its damage. Then the Howl of Agony morph gives an additional 10% damage to off-balance enemies and will be a bit cheaper, while the Howl of Despair morph will now give 20 seconds on the Minor Force and Empower buffs for allies instead of only lasting for 10 seconds. There was also a small change to Siege Shield to only affect abilities that have a base of 28 meters or further. Then several of the damage reduction sources were changed to multiplicative instead of additive. This does mean you are likely to take a bit more incoming damage next patch. I definitely recommend checking out Hyper's video covering these changes if you want to dig in a bit further to that. That will be linked down in the description. Gradual Ravage health potions will no longer be treated as dealing damage to yourself for item set purposes. And then finally, Rush of Agony has a small delay before targets are pulled in, but the size of the pull-in was increased to help compensate. Alright, for the rest of this video, we're going to be digging into the new scribing system. I'll break down how it works, show how to go about unlocking everything for your account, and then I'll go over a few of my favorite skill combinations. So scribing is comprised of 3 major components: grimoires, scripts, and inks. The grimoires are the core skills on which you can apply different effects to customize them. There will be 11 of these coming in the Gold Road chapter, 2 in Soul Magic, 1 in Fighters Guild, 1 in Mages Guild, 1 in the Assault line, and 1 for each of the 6 weapon lines. And by the way, I do have this spreadsheet linked below if you want to go through and see the different options available for each of the different skills. Then we have the scripts. These are the different ways that you can customize your abilities. These are split into 3 components: focus, signature, and affix. The focus is the main thing that the ability will do. So if you want it to be a damage ability, this is the damage type, or maybe you want a support ability, and this is where you would choose a heal or a damage shield. There are 21 different focuses available at launch, and each skill has about 7 or 8 of these to choose from. After the focus, we have the signature script. This is where you add a unique effect to the skill. This might be a heal over time, a damage over time, or even a class mastery. So those are special effects unique to each class. In total, there are 20 signatures available if you include the class mastery. On average, most skills seem to have around 7 or 8 of these to choose from. And then finally for the scripts, we have the affix. This is the final component that you put on at the end. In most cases, a major or minor buff. Typically, the AoE abilities will have minor buffs available, and the single target abilities will have major buffs available, though there will be some exceptions to this. Not the most exciting part of the process, but it can help fill in the gaps in your build, especially for solo or small group play. For 12-person groups, a lot of these will be buffs that will already be present. And then finally, for the third component of the scribing process, we have the ink. This is the material that is used to craft the abilities. You'll need 3 inks per scribed ability, as it takes 1 ink for each script that you add. However, once you have crafted your initial version, you'll only pay 1 ink per script that you change. So if you just want to tweak one of your affixes, for example, you'd only pay 1 ink there. This material is not bound and can be freely traded. All right, now that the basics of the system are out of the way, let's go over how to actually unlock all of this to use on your account. The first thing you'll need to do is a series of quests. The quest line will start in Skingrad, talking to this dude here with the funny name. You will have to do the entire scribing quest line at least once in order to have access to the full system. However, after that's complete, alternate characters will only need to do the short introductory quest line to gain access to it. It took me about 3 hours to do all of the quests on the test server. I've heard estimates of about 6 to 7 hours if you want to listen to all the dialogue. And then the introduction quest only takes about 5 minutes for your alternate characters if you just spam through it. So I will be as spoiler free as possible about the quests themselves, but let's walk through what will be unlocked in that quest line. So you did your intro quest, you turn that in, you'll get your first skill, which is Wield Soul. You also gain access to your first 3 scripts, the magic damage focus, the lingering torment signature, this is the damage over time, and the breach affix. Then you'll continue on to another series of quests, and after that you'll unlock a few more scripts, the healing focus, healing over time signature, then the resolve and off balance affixes. This is where we also unlock a vendor in the Scalarium where you'll have access to all of the grimoires to purchase except for Soul Burst, which will stay locked until completing the final scribing quest. And while we did get those scripts as quest rewards for doing the second part of the quest line, you do not have to bring subsequent characters through this again, as they can purchase these for free on that same vendor. And then finally, this same quest line unlocks the ability to rarely find inks on enemies. For the next part of the quest, it opens up and you have 3 different paths that you can go down. It's really up to you here. You can go down whichever one you want. They each open up different account-wide upgrades. The Griffin Sigil will unlock the focus scripts to be obtainable from daily Delve rewards, PvP rewards for the worthy, and daily Mages Guild quest rewards. The Dragon Sigil makes signature scripts obtainable from daily World Boss rewards, Cyrodiil dailies, and Fighters Guild daily quest rewards. And this also opens up the 9 Mages Guild scripts that can be found in the Overland, which I'll go over in just a bit. And then finally we have the Netch quest line. This makes affix scripts obtainable from daily world event rewards, daily Imperial City rewards, and Undaunted quest rewards. This also causes ink to sometimes be found on harvesting nodes. So one of each of the 3 types of scripts will be a guaranteed drop for the first time you do them each day, and then a 25% chance for each subsequent daily. So if you want to try and really grind it out right away, you can. Otherwise, you can just be a bit patient and do 1 of each type per day. And then each of these sigils also unlocks the potential to purchase a small weekly rotating selection of these scripts. There will be a few available on the vendor in the Scalarium and a few available on the weekly rotating vendor in the Infinite Archive. These do drop significantly in price if you already have the scripts learned on at least 1 character, but they are pretty pricey if you're getting them for your first time learning them here. And as I mentioned before, there are 9 scripts that you can pick up from the Mages Guild halls. I put a super easy to follow guide on my website for these. Essentially just run around to these 9 Mages Guild halls and loot the scripts from the environment. So between the 3 from the introduction quest line, the 4 from the Indrik quest line that are free for other characters to grab on the vendor, and then the 9 here in Mages Guild halls, every character you set up for scribing will have 16 scripts to start with that are not RNG based to find. And then the other 50 scripts will have to be found through the daily quests and the rotating vendors, and these are not account bound when you learn them. So if you are going to be setting up multiple characters for scribing, it's going to be a bit of an investment. And then finally, the special class mastery scripts I mentioned. These are signatures that each class has a unique version of. For those, you will need to collect 50 class script scraps, which also drop from a variety of activities. These appear to have a chance to drop from trials, dungeons, Infinite Archive, arenas, PvP, and master writs. However, once you have obtained 50 and earned this achievement, subsequent characters can simply purchase the class mastery script from the vendor in the Scalarium, so you only have to do it once. And then the final way for obtaining scripts is a random chance to get them from world drops. I believe this term just refers to any sort of looting instance in the Overland, and scripts acquired this way will not be bound and can be listed on the guild traders. This is only a 1 in 10,000 chance to happen, so probably pretty rare for you to find one this way, but with how many people are constantly interacting with the Overland, it won't really be a rare occurrence across the population. I think the idea is that we should slowly start seeing these enter the economy, so if there's one you really need for a character, you might be able to find it listed. But that sums up the unlocking of the system and the acquisition of grimoires, scripts, and inks. So for the last part of this video, I'll just go over some of my current favorite scribing combinations. For DPS, Ulfsild's Contingency in the Mages Guild line seems to be a pretty solid option for most classes. I find myself generally taking the Flame Damage script with the Lingering Torment signature. And then for the affix, most of the time I'll just recommend you take whatever best fits your particular setup, as that's going to vary a lot based on your group and the activity that you're doing. But this skill has made its way into quite a few of my DPS setups. It's a nice 22-second dot with a strong upfront AoE hit to it. I also really like Traveling Knife. With this one, I usually find myself taking the multi-target focus as it puts the AoE portion of this on the ground around the enemy you hit instead of in a radius around the returning knife. But the radius is quite large on the returning options as well, so those can be good if you want to go with a specific element available. For the signature, I really like Warrior's Opportunity a lot. This one is a group-wide debuff on the target, so it'll be really nice to have one person running this. If someone is already handling that in your group, you could also take the status effect signature for 100% increased status effect chance. And then some class masteries will work really nice with this one too, such as the Sork mastery to deal shock damage when you don't have pets summoned, or the DK mastery, which gives you weapon and spell damage, and also reduced damage taken based on how many enemies are around you. Torchbearer also seems like it could be a pretty strong one to use for DPS in AoE scenarios. This has made its way into my Dragonite AoE setup with the flame damage focus and the class mastery for the signature. Another signature that is pretty interesting on this one is the Gladiator's Tenacity. This is a huge amount of damage taken reduction, but it only lasts for just over that 2 seconds that you're spamming this ability, but it will make you really tanky while it's active. For support roles, there are a lot of really great options here. Contingency has a damage shield focus that applies to you and your allies, as well as 8% damage taken reduction for the signature. Then you could put minor protection on the affix as well for another 5% reduced damage taken. So anytime you choose to go with a group buff instead of a damage option, whatever is in the signature and affix is also given to your group mates. Then this damage shield here, it scales with max health or max magicka, so really could be given to the group by a tank or a healer. I can also see both of the soul magic abilities being popular options for chaining. The Wield Soul Grimoire has a single target pull, and the Soul Burst Grimoire has an 8-meter radius AoE pull. So I think having these available will add a lot of flexibility to people's kits. Back to Torchbearer, you can heal or give ultimate with this as well instead of dealing damage. So for example, that massive 30% damage reduction could be waived onto a tank or a group of damage dealers during a particularly hard-hitting phase of a fight. I can see this one being really nice when used in the right sections of encounters. And then we have Minder's Bond, the Restoration Staff skill. I definitely see this one becoming a staple for healers. It's a tether, so you'll typically link it to your tank, and then the group will also be affected by the tether as long as they're between you and the tank. So positioning will be important here, but it does have a pretty wide radius, and the healing output on this one is really, really nice. Also has a unique AoE minor brittle that can be applied to enemies in the tether too, making that one super easy to keep up on multiple targets. And this is just a small taste of what is possible with the new Scribing system. I think for support and PvP, there will be a ton of interesting combinations that people come up with. But let me know in the comments below. I'm really interested to hear what combos you're putting together that you think are going to be really strong for the Gold Road chapter. Thank you again to Bethesda for sponsoring this video. There's a link to purchase Gold Road in the description below. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. I did want to take a second to point out my website. I do have several DPS guides ready to go for update 42 now. I do have a new format I'm trying out for the Arcanist. A bit more straightforward and easy to follow guide. It'll have less options to pick from and instead be more focused on guiding a player from their starting point up to a build that will work for most all content in the game. If you guys like this, maybe I'll try and do it for some more classes too. I want to give a big shout out to my current Patreon supporters and YouTube members. The memberships really help a ton to keep this channel and the website going. Can't thank y'all enough. And a special thanks to Nicholas, Simon, Cougars Bay and the Cougar City Guild, the Order of War Guild, Cantankerous Cat, Shady, Iffy, Blake1816, Mordecai1212, Santanico, Vidridi, Florian, Phoenix, Nalandia, Unemployed, Chryseliana, Cha-Cha, Technical KO, Cap, Danco77, Plepron, and Cladic. Thanks again and see you later. Bye.